So let's talk about all the things this week. If you have something you want to add or bring up from last week that we didn't cover about how to manage those priorities, how to have some more confidence so you can say, yes, I could do that, but you would have to sacrifice something off this list or replace it. I think that's an issue that some of us have, especially in this world where, every week somebody seems to be losing their job or a position. Although I don't know if anybody in the community did this week. Might be one of the first couple of weeks that it hasn't happened. So that's really exciting. Val Geisler, though, has a new position that she's going to be starting soon. So I'm excited for her. She said she's basically been branding herself for the last 10 years. So got a lot of invites immediately to interview, which I think is just awesome. I think it's an important thing that we have to do now to stand out, especially with so many layoffs. And Kevin Lau shared some jobs, well, a job that he's hiring for, but he's got other roles that are opening as well. So I'll share when I see those. So anybody have a topic they want to jump into, or are you going to make me come up with something? Oh boy. Okay. Well, let's see. I know we had a couple interesting discussions come up. So the other day I had somebody ask, they have a lot of requests from all these different reviews and analysts, but seem to be getting very few of their customers that will actually do these reviews. And so her question was, how do I prioritize these companies? As far as like they have Dresner and Forrester and Bark and all the review sites, and that it seems that their leadership is very focused on doing as many of them as possible. So how would some of you more seasoned experts handle that? No one?
You're speaking about peer reviews.
Yes.
What I worked at a company and it was very happy customers. So let's say there was 50,000 customer contacts and I would just randomly extract 5,000, put the email list into the outreach. So it would be like Trust Radius, let's say, and it would be sent off. Very low work. Now, I was very confident because the NPS of the customers was 86.6. So it was like, it didn't matter. Now I've worked at other companies where much more involved, customer is not as happy. So you're a little skeptical of, hey, do I need to vet these contacts first before outreaching? So I think it could be something very simple as get these 5,000 contacts, hit them up with an email. If your customer base is really happy. And then the lift is kind of, it was literally that easy to do. But then again, it's like how many, once you reach a certain amount, like 1,000 reviews, does getting 3,000 reviews make a meaningful impact? I'm skeptical of that. Like there's some threshold where additional reviews just don't matter.
Yeah, that was a good point. Well, someone on the reference and reviews call we had the other day was talking about they connect with their person in Trust Radius, I think they said, like once a month or once a week or something like that to see if they need more reviews or not, so they know where to send them if they do, which I thought was a good idea if you can do that. I don't know. I haven't worked with Trust Radius actually myself, but I'm sure some of you have.
I'm with Ignite, and we, in terms of priority, we focused just on G2, and that was done before I got here. So I'm not really sure why we focused on G2 versus Trust Radius. I can tell you though, like, because that question you said is like, how do you decide where to focus your priorities? I can tell you we don't focus on Gartner at all because our category is not like in any of the quadrants, like any of the Gartner quadrants. So that's kind of why we don't do anything with Gartner. Unfortunately, I wish what we did was in there because we would because at my last job at Click we did focus on the Gartner Magic Quadrant. That was like really all of our efforts were there. So but for G2, we also, like Chuck said, we have a process for people who give us like who are promoters on NPS. They automatically get an invitation to write us a review on G2. So that's completely automated, which is nice. And then they get like a little gift card for writing a review. Yep.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I haven't been able to help this person a lot because I think, you know, most of the teams that I've talked to have been very specific about the analyst or review sites that they choose. And this one seems to be like they'll just try to fill it in for anyone. And they have like EMEA customers, they have APAC and all of that, but I don't think they've found the exact fit with connecting with their customers to make it beneficial or make it even like something that they're interested in. I think they've tried like where G2 has sent things out and just nothing seems to be producing a lot of reviews. So if they send for thousands of customers through G2, where G2 sends the email, they're only getting maybe a handful of reviews. I think it's more about like a lack of connection with the customer. Myself, they do have a community. I don't think they tap into that much for the to like build out that connection or really like plug into the people that are already saying great things about them. But yeah, I'm just going to keep looking around and asking around for that.
And then back at Click, and probably others on the call might be doing this too. Like, does anyone use Influitive? Because maybe you run some challenges in Influitive about writing reviews, and your community in Influitive can earn points for doing that. That's
Yeah.
another incentivized way to do it.
I just want to
Oh.
point out, I did not incentivize that comment in
I
any
know.
way.
I know. Ari.
We all know if we go into Shelly's Influitive and log in, she's got a special challenge that
No, we're not.
just
We
kidding.
used it at Click, but we don't use it at Ignite. I just remember in my previous job that we did that.
Well, Ari's still going to ask you to leave a review anyways, because you have that experience, you know?
Don't cherry pick my reviews. I put it out to the masses.
Oh, so risky, so risky.
So risky, yeah. But
I think
also,
just quickly on that, I mean, I think it's interesting because when you have a situation where you have to manage multiple review sites and you kind of have to become an expert in how they all work, right? Because each one of them brings something different to the table. Each one of them have their own, like G2, the algorithm, you kind of have to figure out, right? And then you kind of have to have a goal, I think. And the goal is not just drive X number of reviews. It's like, what do you want the outcome of that to be? So like for us, it's really important that we maintain placement, or like the leader placement on the grid on G2. And that was our initial goal. And over time, it's evolved into, well, actually, we want to be number one in all of the different indexes because we really value, we pay for the content. We really value the reports. And it's important for us to go head to head against our competitors. And so over time, we've evolved our goals. And that's driven our strategy on G2. So we're like, okay, if we want to be number one, we have competitors who are growing and kind of creeping up on us, then we need to drive more reviews because that's how G2 works. And that's what drives the algorithm. And like with Trust Radius, it's probably going to be content creation. So you don't need as many reviews, but you need good reviews. So you need the best customers who are going to take the most time. And probably similar with Gartner. So I think it's that you have to really understand how they work, what you're trying to get from each of them, and then build a strategy. And then the hardest part is just how do you make sure you're not crossing your lists of people, and that you're being really clear about who you're asking for what? That gets hard. But I think it's just, you kind of have to learn each of those and set up unique goals. I
Oh,
can't hear.
Mary, you're on mute.
Segmenting, I was saying, helps. It thinking about, okay, I'm going to approach these customers, or, I'm putting it in Influitive or sending out this challenge or request to 500 people. I'm not going to send that same request to those 500 people next week. It's going to be a request for something else to another set of customers. Like Chuck was saying, he could pick 5,000 and that would work. You have to kind of test and play with that to figure out where you have that wiggle room to just throw things out there. And from my understanding with this company, they don't have a lot of that wiggle room because there's so much demand on what they're doing, that they just can't seem to fill it up. So I'm lucky that's not my project, I guess.
I'm wondering, is anybody trying, is it called Peer Insights, or the one that's like longer form, where they interview your customers and that's the review gets done that way?
PeerSpot.
PeerSpot. Okay. Is that it? Where Allison works?
PeerSpot. Yeah. So there was one BU from BMC using it. I know when I left, I actually would have loved to use it at one of our conferences. We didn't have the budget at that time, but I know I've talked to several, obviously talked to Allison before. In fact, I think they have an event down in Austin, Texas. I don't know if it was yesterday or maybe it's today. It may not be why she's not on this call. She's got some great representatives. So it seems like it's a good source. I know the folks that headed up our solutions marketing and our BU that were using it were super happy with the product, but I haven't personally used it.
I just wonder where that model fits in versus G2 and Trust Radius, that longer form, more personalized.
Well, I think the longer form is intended, for example, there were reviews from PeerSpot on BMC's site for this particular BU, but also they can take and turn those into full-fledged customer stories. So they were taking and turning those into white papers for the BU and more like customer success stories. So I think that's the advantage. And there's different, I think, levels too of what you can choose, packages of what you can choose as well.
Okay, cool.
I like longer reviews myself, like B2B reviews. I can't remember his name right off the top of my head, but he's been interviewing several of you. I know Leslie was one that was on is it a podcast or a blog post? But I like the longer reviews that he does. And I think it's more helpful to hear some of the pros and cons. I think they make for more trustworthy reviews instead of the companies that have reviews that are just, oh, it's a 5, everything is perfect. It seems to me that most of the time, not everything is perfect. Some people really love things, and that's great. But I like to hear the more nuanced stories.
So that's interesting because today I've been spending some time. I think a lot of you know I got laid off from my company a couple of weeks ago. So I have to decide to go Cobra or investigating some other options. And I read about this company here that does a different healthcare model, mostly in Kentucky and Indiana. But I haven't talked to anybody that used it. So I'm like, no, I'm going to pay more for Cobra. And the guy who runs the company is like, well, did you look at the reviews? I'm like, I want to speak to people. So literally, I've spoken to 5 of his clients today. But I wish there was somewhere I could go to get that information versus just going to his site. And I'm like, is there a opportunity here for advocates? That's what I want to do, is I want to talk to people. So
yeah, that makes me think of something that I was talking about yesterday to someone about the third party. When you get your own reviews, it often feels like, oh, I can pick and choose. And from the other side, I think consumers are starting to maybe question it more. And
Yeah.
sometimes even we do as businesses. So being a third party, I think makes it just a little bit easier. Like you just come across with less bias and yeah, I think it makes it easier for the person that's trying to purchase something because they feel like it can be more trustworthy, even though the company itself might be great. It's the idea that there are so many companies out there saying, look how great we are, but then you hear other things that might not be so great. So, yeah, I'm really thinking more about those third party review sites and things. Not just for customers or people that I talk to in our community, but even for myself, like, having the community, I'm like, oh man, at some point I'm going to have to ask for feedback on a community. And that is terrifying. So, uh, Leslie is logging off. She's way too sick. I hope you feel better.
I feel horrible. What? I am in bed.
Oof.
I know, I'm gross. All
Do
right.
you have COVID?
Back to bed.
No COVID. No, I wish it was. I could have like some answers on why I'm progressively getting worse. But anyways, see you guys tomorrow. CMA Soulmate newsletter. Bye, you guys.
Bye.
Yeah.
By the way, I think she's working on an ebook that she was asking people if they wanted to test it before it goes out. So I think she did post in the community. I don't just think she did post something in the community if you're interested in that.
She posted an invite, yeah.
Oh, okay. Hi, Christine. How was your event yesterday?
It was great. We had new people show up. It was very fun. We went to the Olive or Twist.
The Olive or Twist. So it wasn't like a show, it was a restaurant?
No, it's a bar,
Oh, okay.
Oliver Twist, and they made some pretty nice drinks, and the food is good. So it was nice. We talked for, I don't know, a couple of hours.
Nice. Now, when you do a group like that for customers, it is, right?
It's for anybody in customer education or customer marketing because I'm mixologizing it now. So
Mixologizing it. That's a good word. Okay. Sounds good. Any tips
So it
you
was
want to
fun.
share with us?
they had we talked about how the two you should be working together if they're not already working together on how the two teams should be aligning goals and metrics and anything that they can do to align so that they're working in sync to support customer success.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think that there's so many teams in the post-sales functions that are doing some type of customer marketing, just going out and trying to get customers to be interested in what they're doing. I know from working in community, it was sometimes one of the first people that were trying to do that past like onboarding. So there's a lot of opportunities. And of course, if you can connect, it's a lot easier, but everyone has their silos and doesn't want to share and all of that fun stuff. I've actually
And for
heard
this
from
one,
more
that's what we're really trying to
companies.
do, at least to get
Yeah.
those teams to break those silos. And
Yeah.
because they can cross-functionally support the rest of the organization with a really solid foundation. If they're really in sync, they can do some pretty powerful things together. So
Yeah.
that was the starting discussion. I think next time we're going to talk about go-to-market and what does go-to-market mean for those teams.
Ugh, I don't want to know. I don't want to learn another new term. I'm happy with customer marketing. Can we just leave it at that for now? Although one of the events in the past several months had Sangram something on, and he talked about go-to marketing, and he talks a lot about it on LinkedIn, and it was a really good call, but I can't remember where it was in all our past recordings, or what team it came from or anything like that. So if anyone thinks of it, let me know.
So is Sangram Vajri, and he's at Gainsight? Is that the one you're?
Is he? He's at Gainsight?
If it's the same Sangram,
I'll have to look.
he's very active. Lots of I've seen him speak at conferences probably 3 times. And you know, obviously the relationship between customer marketing and people primarily use Gainsight are in customer success, and I'm sure we've talked about how those 2 teams need to be kind of attached at the hip. But yeah, he is a pretty amazing speaker. So if you get an opportunity, go read or watch him.
He's got a
different. I just put in the chat who I think you're talking about, but I could be wrong.
yeah, that's who I'm talking about. He's not at Gainsight though. He was at Terminus for a while, and he has a community on LinkedIn.
Oh, you're right. Why did I think Gainsight? Sorry.
That's okay. I think there's lots of names out there, so of course we're gonna get some of them messed up. Okay, well, does anyone have anything specific they wanted to talk about or bring up to the group? Oh, hop in, Rebecca.
So I had an interesting experience. I'm curious what others think about this. I've been leaning in on references, and I helped set up a reference call. It was totally outside of my time zone, so I did not log in and welcome. When I do that, I log in, welcome everybody, thank the customer, make the customer the host, and turn off. We have our internal note taker app. I turn it off. So someone else did this and they left it on, which I thought was interesting. And more interesting was listening to the call where the customer gave us a 6.5 out of 10 and proceeded to share some not very positive experiences, acknowledging that some of their challenges were their own, and part of why they're not getting the most out of our product is because they haven't invested the time and effort. But it was just super interesting to me, and I'm curious if anyone else has ever had this experience, and sort of like what you did about it. Like, did you follow up with the customer? Did you ignore it? Because it's sort of weird that we recorded it, and I told the sales rep not to. But anyways, just curious if anyone had any experience with anything like that.
Who picked that reference?
Well, so we don't have an advocacy program. We don't have a reference program. We were looking for someone with a very specific integration, and there weren't tons of choices. And I think our CSM didn't know the customer well enough. So that's a whole nother issue that's
a much bigger discussion.
Yeah, that's what I've been like beating a drum and saying. Yeah, our whole reference program, it doesn't exist. It needs so much work, and I'm trying to make that change. But in the meantime, like, it's really weird.
But no, we don't take notes for our calls either, Rebecca. So if it were to show up, I would be surprised. I do think that you need to make sure that the CSM is aware of the discussion as the minimum, but that's really as far as I would take it from if I were doing it. I would just make sure that people were aware that there were issues that do need to be addressed, and we can't have this person as a reference again for a bit because we need to get them in a better space.
Oh, yeah. The sales rep was not very happy with me. It's a relatively big deal. And
the sales rep wasn't happy with you?
Yeah, well, because I helped source the reference.
Oh, well, I mean, you do what you have to do, but
I mean, he wasn't happy in general. And
gotcha.
Yeah, our reference program is non-existent, so it's a huge.
In general, I hear that people do not record reference calls. Because
you don't want to keep the bad news.
Well, yeah,
if there is any bad news, to be honest. I mean, I have customers that had a rocky journey, and they are now our best references because we got them to the other side of the rocky journey part of it, and now they are incredibly successful, and they are prepared to grow their programs based on the work that we've already done with them. So they are a great reference, but if we had talked to them this time, you know, a year and a half ago, no, there's no way we would have been able to use them as a reference. They just were in a really bad place. So
That brings up something that I've been thinking about lately is, you know, how quickly we get tools implemented is obviously a big deal, especially on the company side, the software side that you're using, and you want to get things implemented very quickly. But I've been hearing more stories of it taking longer to get tools implemented. And I'd love to ask people, if you're using, you know, you have any tools that have taken a while, just tell me about it. Not trying to like focus just on customer marketing or advocacy. I'm just interested in learning like what that process looks like, what that length of time looks like, because there's some tools that like I've used Influitive, and don't worry, Ari, it won't be too awful. But I've used Influitive, and when we got it, it was implemented very quickly in less than 2 months. But we weren't using it. We immediately launched it, the team that I was on, for like 27 people. And then it just sat there. And then I came in and joined, and I started working with those 27 people. At one point, our CMO was like, you need to get this community started. You have 2 weeks. So I invited a whole bunch of people. We had like 300 or 400 people in there, but I noticed even 6 months into myself using that, and we were getting results, I was still learning things about how to use Influitive. And it wasn't the customer success person. It wasn't like their fault or anything. There was a lot of great documentation. It was just like getting to the point where I felt comfortable adding that next layer. So I find myself thinking more about how companies are doing that. One call I had this week, somebody was talking that they were like 3 or 4 months in with a new tool. It wasn't Influitive, but they were like, it's not launched yet. And I'm kind of frustrated, and I feel like it should be launched. And I reminded them that like Alexi Glover in our community, we talk once in a while, and she was telling me like a lot of times when you're getting these tools, like if you have older data that you want to bring in, there's a lot of like cleaning up that data and all of those things. So just that implementation time, and like whose fault is it if it goes long? Sometimes it's the software company's fault, sometimes it's really yours. And just understanding that more, because a lot of people do bring it up and ask like, should it seem like it takes this long? But I've also heard of people that have taken a year to fully implement a new tool and are happy with it. So I'm just really interested in all of that. I won't ask if you all have had good experiences with custom
I
marketing
think sometimes it
tools.
just depends on what kind of software it is that you're trying to implement. I mean, when I was at the big guys, right, with Oracle, HCM Cloud, just my part of it, right? There's like 18 modules that are a part of HCM, and implementing all of them is going to take probably 2.5 years.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? Because there's just so much. If you were to implement everything, my Insighted implementation took me 5 days. So
Yeah,
right,
there's
it's
a
relative.
spectrum in
Right.
how many hands the product is touching, how many integrations there are, right? What departments, the size of your own
And
company.
I phased everything, right? So that we didn't do
Yeah.
any integrations in round one. We didn't do, all we did was base community functionality. We didn't add any of the extras on. Those became parts of phases 2 and 3. And that, I think part of it is just project planning, right? If you want to get something out quickly, then you implement the most restricted setup that you possibly can, so that you can get it done in a much shorter time period. Because the more you choose to implement, the more you have to test, the more you have to do all of those other things, and the more you involve other people. And once we start involving other people, then we run into the meeting hell, right? We got to find a
Mhm.
time where we can get on somebody's calendar so that we can just describe to them what we want them to do and how we want them to do it and get some buy-in from them. And that could take 2 or 3 weeks sometimes, just for that one person. And
That's
now our
true.
timeline
then the
is,
other
you
thing,
know, is already
and
3
the
weeks
other
old.
thing is too, you finally get on these people's calendars and their expertise is different than your expectation. So
Right.
you finally get to the point where you're setting a meeting, and maybe they are, in my world, a Salesforce admin expert, and in Allison's world, the same thing. Like they could recreate Salesforce with their eyes closed. And then you get to another Salesforce admin and they know where the buttons are and they know how to get to setup, but they don't know how to do anything, and that's fine. And it's totally okay no matter what the situation is. But that right there, until we have that meeting as a vendor, I can't tell you how long it's going to take. I
Exactly.
can give you
Right.
a really, really, really accurate range, but your range is really dependent on so many different factors. And I don't want to point a finger, and I'm not going to place blame. And we have to come prepared no matter what the situation is. But that impacts things, and that really changes your all's experience, right? You're not the Salesforce admin, and that's fine. But we all have to work together to come up with a plan that meets expectations, that aligns with expectations, that meets everybody's needs. But really, that can change based on things that are totally out of my hands as a vendor, in your hands as the end user or the champion of the product. So that's when I think people get frustrated.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think for me, like having all these people in our community that do come and ask questions about which tool should I use or which tool is best for this, and I want to help them. I would like to write something at some point that I can point people to, like, as far as implementation goes, yeah, there are definitely vendors in the space that at least I've talked to where their customers have been able to implement really quickly. But there's other vendors in the space where I think the person that I was talking to said it was like 9 months before they implemented this tool, and they were extremely happy with it. And they did a ton of their own work and training themselves for the other teams to think about their pain points and the processes they already had. And she said the change management was just very simple and very quickly adopted because they put so much thought into that, the way that people needed to use this new tool. So I'm just interested in what people's thoughts and ideas are. And I think it helps, like this person that's like, we bought it 3 or 4 months ago and we're still not launched. And I was like, I think that's kind of common. Like there's a lot of work that can go into that. And like you said, it's not always the vendor. A lot of times it is the user's company, and I think we like to blame the vendor, right? Like we're like, well, we just got it implemented 6 months ago, even though it took us forever. And now we've got to renew in 6 months. And I don't know if it's worth it. Well, was it their fault for that 6 months? And so it's just something that I've been thinking about, and I'd love to like hear some stories and thoughts on.
Well, I think, Mary, the other interesting side of this conversation is actually what we do to help our customers implement. So when you started the thread, I thought you were actually talking about that side of it. So one of the things that I'm trying to figure out right now is, we've got like implementation and then this onboarding thing, and what's high touch and what's low touch, and how do I partner with the CSMs? And so that's something that, for at least for me, falls under like lifecycle marketing, under customer marketing, is how prescriptive are we with our customers to help them to see value and reach their milestones, and how do we partner with CS and the product team to get people the value? So sort of two sides of the conversation.
Hey, Mary. So I've implemented Influitive twice. And the first time was very much, hey, let's round up internal stakeholders and resources to like make this happen. And it was a pretty long and kind of arduous process. The second time around, I hired a former Influitive director of marketing and customer and community, a gentleman named Sherman Tang.
Oh, okay.
You guys know. But anyways, he was like our Sherpa the second time around. Like he knew exactly what we had lots of meetings with him up front. we introduced him into like our Salesforce admin and various folks across the company. And then he basically was the, the engine that drove our implementation, and it went by like that, and it was done right the first time, and it was done, absolutely the way we wanted it. So I don't know if you can find like an external resource that doesn't necessarily work for the vendor, but is sort of your champion, right? And moving your implementation along.
That kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier with a third party involved. Like, just it, you can have the best company and the best reputation, but a lot of times it just feels more comfortable to go with a third party because they can feel more like your champion. Nothing against Influitive and their customer marketing or their professional services. We used those when I was at the company I was talking about. You got
And
something?
I think there's a niche for third party too, right?
Yeah.
So if you are brilliant with a particular software, then putting yourself in that position to be the Sherpa for new implementations it's a niche that that organizations can take advantage of if they're medium-sized or bigger, right? Enterprise people don't hesitate to pull in a partner to help them implement, right? Because the partner then can take care of a lot of the nonsense, and I don't have to give up a team member or multiple team members to do that, right? We can let the partner take on a lot of that kind of responsibility. If you're a mid-sized organization, you may not have that flexibility because it costs money, right? I mean, and I don't have that kind of money I'd rather use that money somewhere else, right? It's all about those priorities that we've been kind of having those conversations about in a bunch of different places. And that money could be better used somewhere else than paying a third party person to manage this, right? I need to do this internally so that I can leverage those other things or build bridges, right? With the bridges didn't exist before, I can use this project as an opportunity to create those bridges and create those inroads in ways that I couldn't have done without it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Budgets are tight, right? It's an opportunity to build connections and relationships with your coworkers and internal teams and that sort of thing. My only comment would be like, to do an implementation and it's not right, you know what I mean? Like, it's hard to put the genie back in the bottle, so to speak.
Right.
Once you've gone down the path and there's kind of point of no return. So, if you get something stood up and it's not how you want it and it's wonky and it doesn't integrate properly or whatever, then you might end up spending more money, right? To go back and try to fix the issue or the challenge.
Yeah, that's
and I think that
actually what
becomes
we did.
the point, Andrew, right? That's the thing is, how do you know which side of the coin you're going to be on this time? How do you try to figure out whether you're going to need someone to help you or whether you could try to do this yourself and not go too far down that, oh, I screwed this up really bad road?
Yeah.
I've done that a couple of
Yeah.
times, and
Yeah.
going back to fix it is not any fun.
Yeah, and I think that's why I was like adamant about hiring Truman the second time around, because I'm like, I need help. I need expert help, right, to do this right. So, yeah.
Yeah, we definitely messed up our instance of Influitive. We started it with, it was just going to be for like our champions. And then the CMO was like, hey, why aren't we using this for more things? You need to launch a community for all of our customers in 2 weeks. And I just jumped in and did a whole bunch of stuff. And probably 4 months later, we were like, oh, we have things we really need to fix because I didn't know certain things about the reporting and stuff like that and how the groups were set up. Like, I didn't get the onboarding that the person before me got. And so I was just running rampant trying to figure out what to do. And we ended up hiring an agency that came in. And I'm sure when they came in, they were probably like, what did she do? But we had so much to do, and the company had people leaving constantly and in exit interviews being like, I was working 60 to 80 hours a week. I couldn't do it anymore. They knew that, and they were like, don't worry, we're going to get to a point where that's not true anymore. We didn't while I was there, but it's just when you're going like that, sometimes you don't do things perfectly and then you need that extra help. But luckily, not everyone is like that. So yeah. Anything you want to say on all of that influitive talk, Ari?
No, Andrew. Turnover during onboarding, a vendor's dream.
I was tuned out for some of that about influitive, maybe purposely selective hearing.
It wasn't bad. It
I'll
wasn't
also
bad.
say, you know, when you're thinking about tools and products, and if anyone on this call knows, I never sell influitive ever. Like, it's not my thing. It's not my approach. I'm not pitching. If anything, we're pitching, it's like a campaign to help the industry. It's never like, come sign up for an influitive demo, come watch it. Never. That's just not my way. I will say that my experience with influitive has changed over the years. Influitive tried to sell to me in 2015 and 16, and the product is very different now than it was then. So we also have to look at reviews temporally, right? Because it matters, and tools and technology are evolving. Some don't evolve, and I guarantee a lot of people on this call might know a couple vendors that it's like that same tool they released in 2015 is the tool you're going to use today, right? I know firsthand that the tool, you know, the company I work for is not. It's one of the reasons I came over, and I know where they're going, right? I know what the releases look like. I know what that product roadmap is and how they're changing and evolving. And so you have to, it's important to understand what a current experience is, not someone who used it a year or two ago, because SaaS products change very quickly. And I would say in the SaaS world, what other industry can you sell a product like a car and say, hey, you're going to buy the car, but right now all we have is the engine, the steering wheel, a seat, and the gas pedal. The wheels are coming, we promise.
Hey, you can do that with Tesla.
The doors are coming, we promise, right? Like, it's all in the roadmap. Check it out. It's here. It's coming. But you can sell this like partially done thing with the, you know, and so, but because of that, and it's a reality, you want to get, there's still value in what you can get out of it now. The engine works, right? You can rev it up and maybe that does something for you. But we're used to the fact that these things evolve quickly, right? When you're releasing weekly or bi-weekly, your product is changing. So I would just tell people to be very specific with who they're talking to, right? And what that relative experience is like now versus something previously.
Well, and truly what your needs are, right? If you truly target what your needs are, when you go into those initial vendor discussions, you can find the right partner to help you with the needs that you have, but you have to be very clear. You can't just walk in and expect them to know what is going to be good for you, especially on, you know, those first couple of calls. You need to go in and say very specifically, well, and again, Mary, you need to do that work, right?
Yeah.
You need to figure out what the goal is and really understand what is the goal that we're trying to solve for.
Mm-hmm.
Can I want to say something on that though. There is a distinction here. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And there are a lot of junior people in this world. And so really, when you're looking at a vendor, what I would recommend to people is do not just evaluate the tech stack. You could have a suboptimal tech stack, not quite as good, but if they have a bench of experts that are willing to help level you up there and can add and help you form what questions to ask and how to build better business models, right? So that you're delivering more value internally because you don't know how to do that. That's critical. I will say that the strongest part of Influitive is not our tool. It is the bench of experts you get access to. That practice team, Erica Anderson and Megan Wilson, and like, they are phenomenal. Amy and her strategy sessions, like, that's just, so when you evaluate someone, you've got, I would recommend always looking at the whole picture of what they are, not as a vendor, but as a partner. Are they someone you can trust and help grow your career and your business, right, together? And so it's really much more of that partnership that you're looking for. What is the community like that you're getting exposed to by joining them? Do they have a lot of other customers that you can bounce ideas off of, right, and learn from in that community? There's to me, when SaaS buying, you have to look at that whole thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree. It's not just about the software. It's about how they're going to support you moving forward. And what does that look like? And that's that kind of thing you can usually tell in the first couple of calls. I mean, you're either going to get the right vibe or you're not. But
Yeah.
again, you kind of have to know what you're looking for, right? Even if it really is industry best practice, then ask those kinds of questions of the vendors when you're talking with them, and ask them to help you identify what that looks like. And sometimes you'll know, right? They'll be saying, this is what we consider to be best practice. We are, in upper right G2, and this is one of the reasons why, because we can do these things. And you look at that and you say, and then what somebody else might be jabber, 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 jabber. And you're listening to them and they're going, those are all buzzwords. You didn't say anything. And again, it depends on the software that you're looking for. It depends on the need that you have. Sometimes if you have to implement quickly, if they're really telling you have less than 30 days, that's a tight timeline to get a sale and an implementation done in less than 30 days. That's a request that I would hesitate to take on.
So if you have questions about how to manage those things, Christine is usually around for anybody wondering, and she's in the community, which is my other kind of plug there, is ask the community what they think. For me, I've been talking to some of the vendors about being sponsors for the community. I'm going to be launching the website better and stuff like that soon. And one of the things is they're like, well, can't we just do a referrals thing? And I'm like, it doesn't work for me, because a lot of the times when I talk to someone in our space, they've already talked to multiple vendors. They've already had demos, and now they're just looking for some kind of third-party person or group to talk them through how different tools work compared to each other. And I think that's important too, because I've learned a lot from the community myself. I know others have learned a lot from the community, and just jumping in and asking, hey, does anybody use this tool? What do you think? I think can be really helpful. The people in customer marketing and advocacy specifically are so helpful to each other. It's more than what I even saw with just community managers, who I always thought were very helpful and communicative and all of that. But in customer marketing advocacy, it's so much more. Just very supportive people. So I'd ask people's experiences and what could they have done better themselves, because a lot of times, when you use technology, or a friend comes up to you or someone at Thanksgiving and they're like, hey, I'm having a hard time with this stupid thing. Apple doesn't answer, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, oh, you just don't know how to do this. It's user error. So ask your community, whichever community it is. It doesn't matter to me.
You have a vendor-free group. That's a safe space, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and I see the same thing though in the customer education group, Mary. The people are willing to share in ways that with some of the other groups that I belong to, it's not quite as easy. It's asking even some of the developer forums that I lurk in. It's more challenging to get those tidbits of information. Like, what makes you think that? Why do you like this one? What is it that makes you like this tool better than this other tool? And, it has nothing to do with the tool itself. It's because my CSM is awesome. Right.
I've had people like that where their CSM, the CSM alone can kill an account just by not being great, or they can take that account for 5 years because they are so great. And it has been different, not different, but very similar in all vendors that I've talked to different people. If they have a good CSM that they feel is enabling them to continue to grow in that, using that tool in their career, then awesome. But if not, it just can't do it. Bye, Christine. Thank you for jumping on.
Yeah,
So-
Mary, real quick on that. It's so painful when you have an amazing CSM and then the CSM deck gets reshuffled and you get assigned to a new CSM, and it's like this learning curve where they have to kind of, I know they do some internal like transition, or most companies do, but transition of knowledge. But I mean, gosh, getting like, getting a relationship going with a new CSM who maybe is newer to the company or whatever, it's like, oh, it's kind of painful.
I had an experience probably back in like October, November, where I was helping a customer with a new tool for community. And we got on the first call with our CSM, and she had been working with that company for 9 months. She was just out of college, and she was arguing with me about whether we could have multiple goals in setting up our community. And I was just like, I'm done. Like, I will go and figure this out on my own. Please don't bother me with weekly, bi-weekly calls. I don't need that. I know what I'm doing. Please just answer a question if I send you an email. Not that I'm full of myself, but just that's really difficult to deal with when you know what you need to do and you have some expertise. I wish there was a better way they could match CSMs, but I think we're quite a ways from that. Have fun, Ari. Get those nominations in.
I was stressing so hard the first
Why?
beginning of this week because it was 2 weeks in, and halfway through I wasn't near the numbers of what I was expecting. And in the last 2 to 3 days, because the timeline is coming up, everyone's been nominated. So I have been like, where you feel the ulcers just starting to form. It's a lot, but it's all good. So I'm really happy and thankful.
Good.
Though I
Good.
haven't at all, as you can tell. All right, bye.
Bye. And everyone else, this was a great call, even though we didn't have a specific topic coming in. I'll just say, I don't have a specific topic for next week planned, but after that, I plan on bringing in Jermaine Edwards, I think his name is. He's also on LinkedIn. He's been doing a lot with like the customers and helping companies with that. So I thought it would be a good conversation because he's come up with all of his own templates and stuff. And it's just interesting to hear what he's talking about, relationships and things like that. Tuesdays, we're having a jobs call for really anybody in the CMA world that is either looking for jobs, wants to share career advice, anything. If you want to come and share how you found a job or updates on any companies you know of that are hiring, things like that, please jump on Tuesdays. And I'll see you all in the community. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, Mary. Have a great birthday.
You too. Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Not mine yet. Another.
Thank you. Bye, Maria. I hope you have a good weekend.
Thanks. I hope you do too. Bye-bye.